Hey, welcome to the Social 333 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bentley. Today, my guest is Erik Hatterscheidt.
That is correct, sir.
Yes, I did it right. Awesome. Erik, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
So I found myself in the good fortune of having fallen into a position where I'm leading an international men's adventure expedition club. We run motorcycle missions around the world, and we deliver aid to foreign places where vehicles typically have a hard time getting into. But then in that process, we really focus on the development of the men that we've got and turn them from really just members within the club to transformational leaders within their businesses, their families, their organizations, and do that through the process of training for the missions and then conducting those missions.
Talk to me about the Brotherhood, because we had somebody on the show and I've been talking about it a lot, and I've gotten kind of some slack on it, some internet slack about it, is that there isn't really a whole lot of men hanging out with men. And I think there's kind of a stigmatism now about, guys hanging out with guys is like a bad idea or whatever, right? And it's just, for me, it's just a lot of isolation, right? Like entrepreneur, business owner, you end up being really isolated. You work a lot, you create a lot of ideas, and you end up just working, right? And obviously, if you're in a relationship, you have a girlfriend, and your girlfriend isn't the same as hanging out with a dude, right? Like you can't be like, hey, girl, let's go. And unless she's like really into that kind of stuff, like let's go squat, a bunch of stuff at the at the bench, and then go do this and that, and then we're gonna go like shoot guns and shoot arrows and then hop on bikes and like ride off into the sunset, right? Like, you may meet a couple girls that are like that. I've met a couple girls that are like that, but for the most part, dudes need to hang out with dudes every once in a while and do dude stuff, right? And talk about that with your program. Like, what do you got going on with that?
So one thing that we find with men is, especially men that carry higher levels of responsibility, and as they increase in those levels of responsibility, it's harder and harder to find other men that they can relate to and that understand the burden of responsibility that does rest on their shoulders. And often the default mode is to take on that responsibility without sharing that with anyone. And then what will often happen is you'll resort to forms of escapism just because that responsibility is so heavy. And what we've seen is that those forms of escapism can be very unhealthy. So that can be drugs or alcohol or women or video games or just a whole host of things that they're not fulfilling in the bigger picture, and they're not healthy for that individual. And so having a brotherhood that understands you and not only supports you, but also cares about you so much that they're willing to actually call you out on your shit sometimes and say, hey, listen, man, like this isn't good. And we're going to tell you because we love you. But we're also going to support you to the thing that you should be doing or the thing that you do need. And so that's very, very important. And I can very much understand where you get, there's a real, there's a tendency in society right now to ostracize men and men hanging out with each other because they think there's this toxic male culture that grows within those groups. What we found, we have brought women into our male groups, and what we found is that bringing a woman in, it distracts the guys from having healthy conversations. And now I understand where a lot of people are coming from. If guys are hanging out with guys, it can very quickly evolve into toxic behavior. And we've seen that. And one of the things that we're very intentional about in the club is if you're hanging out with other guys, you have to hang out with a base set of values or ground principles. And if you do that, if it's just guys will begin to feel comfortable being more vulnerable and opening up and letting their walls down. As soon as you have a woman that enters the group, that dynamic changes. And all of a sudden, guys don't feel comfortable being as vulnerable. And you can blame that on whatever you want. But the fact is that we found that to be a reality. So we found through experience, it's much healthier to have just men hanging out because they're able to go to a depth that they need to go to be real with each other. That actually allows them to reach another level that they didn't know they were capable of from there.
Yeah, we had someone on that does Christian Brotherhood, and like I understand kind of where you're going with it because there's like obviously some principles from the Bible, that kind of stuff that they fall back on.
Yeah.
And I agree 1,000% because for a long time and kind of some part right now, I'm pretty alone. Like I'm pretty isolated. I'm really busy with work, really trying to like do my own thing, and I got caught up in a lot of vices and things that I shouldn't have gotten caught up with if I had a strong brotherhood. If I went to, your course or I was friends with you or we're doing brotherhood stuff together and it's like, hey, Chris, like we don't do that. And I could have been like, what? Like, you don't do that? And you're like, no, dude, like we don't do that. And I'm like, oh, and I could have stopped. But because I didn't have the brotherhood, or I maybe didn't feel comfortable talking to somebody. I'm in therapy now, right? Like I didn't have somebody to talk to. I could have knocked all that stuff out. And I think the program that you have right now, like, so is it a brotherhood around humanitarian and around motorcycles, or just a brotherhood and just in general?
The organization that we run is very unique. And it was never my plan to build it into what it is. It evolved out of what the guys needed. And so when I say that, it started as my best friend and I going on a whim, walking past a couple of motorcycles in Guatemala and asking if we could rent them and go into the jungle and just explore. And then that evolved into us inviting friends. The short version of the story is all of those friends said they could go. We put deposits on bikes and then they all canceled. So out of desperation, because we didn't want to lose the deposits on the bikes, we we had just put a call out on social media and said, hey, anybody who wants to come and explore the jungles of Guatemala with no set plan, let us know. And we had 6 guys that kind of answered that call, and that allowed us to go and explore Guatemala together. But then that evolved into those guys really finding out during that experience how much it mattered to them to be in a situation where there wasn't cell phones every evening. You're having in-depth conversation and supporting each other through that, and then supporting each other beyond that expedition and helping each other be better leaders for themselves, for their families, for their communities. And then they started asking, where's the next thing? Like, where are we going to evolve into this? And that was where we're like, oh, we didn't know this was a thing we were going to keep doing. And then those guys kept inviting other guys. And that's essentially how it grew from 2 of us to now we're over 300 guys around the world that are doing that.
That's really awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome. I started doing martial arts when I was a kid, and then, I took some stops here and there, thinking about getting back into martial arts. And the only reason I'm getting really back into it, outside of like health and just trying to lose weight, is that it's just like, if I were to go and shed tears and blood and sweat with someone, just like how I was in high school football, and like they're my best friend. Because it's just like, if I have a sparring partner and we're sparring and then we're like, okay, cool, awesome. And then, you want to hang out and like grab a bite or something, it's just way different than just some random dude that you're meeting at a bar or something like that.
Yeah. What we stumbled upon by accident was that we're really a very effective group for men's mental health. We're almost like the therapist that a lot of guys are unwilling to go to. Because we intentionally, if you're working with us in the organization, every evening that we're physically together, we have fireside chats, and we intentionally choose those topics. And then every week when we're at home, away from expeditions and training, then we're doing those same fireside chats, and we're just bringing a level of depth. Most guys, when they see what we do from the outside, they're like, oh, there's all this adventure and it looks amazing. There's motorcycles. You're going to crazy places. You're going and seeing some of the most remote people in the world. And that's what draws them in. But the thing that keeps them there is that fireside chat component, which most of them brush off initially. And then once they've experienced it through their first training camp, they find that that's the most life-changing thing that has had the most impact on them, other than any of the other stuff they thought was going to be what they came for.
That's really interesting. Like, it's almost like you said, like a therapy session where everybody get to kind of hear somebody else's thing and kind of do it. That's really, really interesting, because I found that, like, we had Travis on here, and he was talking about brotherhood and stuff, and I was talking to him like off there and on there, and I was like, hey, like, I was going through this or that, and he's like, oh yeah, I did that too, and I'm like, oh, like, and then inside my head I'm like, oh, well, like, I'm not alone.
Oh, so what we found, I mean, there's a lot of things we've learned along the way, because I'm not a therapist. But one of the things that we found was integral to those fireside chats being effective is you have to have who is perceived to be the leader in the group. They have to lead with, hey, I've messed up in my life too. And they lead with, these are the things that I've screwed up. These are the things I'm embarrassed about. These are the things I struggle with right now. And that really opens up the floor to be like, it's okay to talk about it. No one's perfect. We're all trying. And you have to have that element in order for the group to really get to what's real, start stating the facts about themselves. And then that's where you can actually start addressing, okay, now how do we support each other from here?
Where are these remote places that you go to? Because like, I'm kind of interested. Are these like Survivor Island kind of episodes kind of deal where you guys are like, really roughing it or what?
Yeah. I mean, we travel all over the world to primarily third world countries. So we just had a team come back from Kyrgyzstan.
Wow.
Prior to that, we were in remote Albania. We had a team in Papua New Guinea, Madagascar, Namibia, Morocco, Guatemala, all over Latin America, parts of the Africas. I mean, I'm struggling to come up. We're typically doing about 18 expeditions a year, and we're going to some of the most remote places. Sometimes so remote that I don't know how much detail you want me to go into,
Sure.
But we found things that we didn't expect where we literally are going in and, for instance, in parts of Papua New Guinea, we went into the tribes that we're going to deliver medical supplies to. They are asking us to trade for knives and axes and like hard goods that they're having a hard time getting. And I was like, I thought this was like 200 or 300 years ago stuff, but it's still something that we're seeing. And what surprised me as well is a lot of the places we're going now, we are oftentimes some of the first Westerners that those tribes have seen. And so they'll come to you and they want to feel your skin and your hair and just like they're all over you because they haven't seen anything that looks like you sometimes ever, especially the children. The children in a lot of places have never seen anything like us. So very, very remote places for a lot of the expeditions. Some of them we go where the need is. And so some of them might not be as remote, but we do get out there. Yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went to the Philippines. I have a funny story about people touching you and stuff. So I was walking through the market, and I have a couple of tattoos, and like I stopped traffic to walk across the street, and which I thought was really funny. And then I get into the market, and I feel like like walking through the aisles and stuff, and somebody like got me like on the elbow and the skin. And I was like, dude, what was that? And like they didn't think it was like it was just. I don't know. Once you go to a third world country, your mindset is completely different. I mean, when I went to the Philippines, I saw people living in the trash.
Oh yeah.
And to somebody that's somebody that's born and raised and lived in the U.S. their whole life, they're like, what? Like somebody lives in the trash. And people lose their lives in the trash too, because like the monsoon will come and somebody will just go all the way down to I mean, some of the craziest stuff, people living under bridges, not like homeless people, but like actually living under the bridges. I've seen some pretty intense stuff to make me really grateful for just being able to flush the toilet, or like take a hot shower or drive in a car somewhere. Or to like not have to kill the family chicken to eat tonight, like some really, really interesting things. What have you seen like outside of?
I mean, maybe there's a lot, but two instances that come to mind, and maybe it's because I just referenced Papua New Guinea, but something that struck me was when we were in Papua New Guinea and in one of the tribes that we were at, every time you do anything, the whole tribe gathers around just to see what you're doing because they haven't seen stuff like that before. And I remember Jordan.
There's no TV.
There's definitely no TV. Yeah, we are the TV. And so Jordan, the other co-founder in the club, one morning he got up and we camp. Everything is self-supported off the bikes. Our camp supplies and everything are on the bike. So he got up out of his tent and he goes and he starts putting his socks on, and the whole tribe gathers around just to watch him put his socks on because they have never seen socks before.
And then I have no idea.
And it's something that it would never have occurred to me to be like, oh, just like, I'm grateful for the fact that we've got socks. It's something you don't even, it's so dismissible for us, but for them, they're like, that's the most amazing thing that you guys have socks. And they gathered around and they were like, hey, can we have the socks? Unfortunately, we've only got, when we're on expedition, we got like 2 pairs of wool socks. So it's like, can't give these away, but so that's an instance that comes to mind. And another one, I just remember, there's a mental flash for me that we were in very remote Peru, high elevation Peru. And I remember riding past a series of stone huts, and there was a young mother with her baby, holding this baby in the doorway of a stone hut. But what I noticed was that there was a window right next to her where there was no window. There's no covering. And it was cold. And I thought, man, even if they have a fire in that little stone hut, you know that it's getting below freezing at night
and drafty.
Yeah. And I'm like, that baby is like not even one. And that's where they live. That's the place that they're set up. And it was smaller than my bathroom. And I just remember thinking, like, that is their life. That's what they know. And I'm not saying they're not grateful for it. I'm just saying it's a very, very good reality check for like what we have here.
That's how it was for me when I got back from the Philippines. I was like, wow, like, I can't believe, all that stuff that I saw. Talk to me about a success story from the field. Like, you have a guy come through the program, a brother, and then, he may, I don't know, maybe he's like somebody like me who just needed some guidance, or maybe needed somebody to tell him like, hey, like, we don't do that, bro. And, maybe had some vices or something like that, some addictions.
I'm thinking, because a lot of guys have vices.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue we all have vices. I have vices.
I agree.
I have vices. And so it's all about accountability to say, hey, like, where are you at with that? Because you have to go to the group and say, I want this for myself. So one thing that's important to us is we don't go and tell guys what they have to do. We're saying, what do you want for yourself? And we'll hold you accountable to that. And so we see that all the time with guys that say, hey, like, I want help with this vice or that vice, or things that they're going through. I would love to give you, so we have a lot of examples, and if you ever look at Freshline, we have pages of testimonials.
Oh, really cool.
I think what's most impactful to me is my own story. So in this, and I'll try and keep it brief, but I grew up on a small wilderness resort in British Columbia. I went to university, I studied business, and I came back and ran that resort because my parents, they wanted me to come back and run it, and ideally grow it. And I felt the pressure of responsibility in taking on that business. It was an interesting business, and a lot of times it was fulfilling. It was fun, but it was very isolating in both physically, like in the physical sense, and it was also very isolating when it came to the responsibilities of ownership. Because as soon as I took over, my parents, they took off, and they're like, okay, you got this. And I fell into a state where I began to drink. And it was one of those things where you're just like, well, it's taking the edge off at night. And then and then you're like, well, now it's a few more drinks at night. And then it was a few drinks at night. And then like, man, I'm really not feeling like I want to engage today. There's a lot on my shoulders. And so now it's a drink in the morning. Now it's a couple drinks in the morning. And the thing that pulled me out of that was the Brotherhood, was guys in the club, who cared enough about me to say, hey, like, this is not okay. You're not okay. They never said you can't, like, you shouldn't do this. They said, let's have a look at life with you and see how we can change the circumstances of your life so that you don't feel you need to escape it. And what ended up transpiring there is I got coaching, business coaching from guys that were in the club. We have guys that are in the club that have run businesses that are far bigger than I've ever run, into the multi millions. And there's great mentorship there. And that's part of the club is there's an expectation of mentorship if you've got the experience. Then we had guys that were more on the just life experience. There's huge benefits to having guys that are older than me, and essentially saying, let's look at your life and see what you need. And we mapped out what needed to happen, both in the business I was running at the time to feel like I had a grasp on the responsibilities and what I needed to do there. And we actually put together a plan and worked through building up the business I was in, that wilderness resort. But then from there saying, hey, what's your plan beyond that for your life? And that led me to building up the resort to the point where I think we tripled our revenue in that next year from that moment. And then more than 6x our profit and income. And I ran it for another 2 years after that and had an exit plan with my parents where I said, hey, I now have a plan for my life, and it doesn't involve just being here at the resort and going off and starting other businesses. And that ultimately transpired to kind of where I am today. Again, this wasn't part of the plan, but it allowed me to go be very entrepreneurial and build a life. And from the moment that the guys were there to say, hey, like, let's give you the path to hope. Mm-hmm. I organically stopped drinking. I organically was like, I don't feel like I need this anymore as a vice. And so, that's my personal experience. And there was even low points in the club where, even beyond that, at times when I wanted to start the next business where I didn't have enough money to even cover rent. And without asking, it was the guys that came together and said, hey, like, we heard through Jordan that you're trying to get this other business off the ground. You're struggling to cover rent. Don't worry about it. We already paid rent for you for the next couple of months for your place. And so just like really being there through that and knowing that those guys are there and me having the sureness of just knowing they've got my back no matter what. And then creating that for every guy that comes in the club. There's a lot to that. And then that's the part where I think modern men are completely lost because they don't have that. I think back in tribal times, that was something that guys really had. Like, I know my guys got my back. Now it's hard to find. And so we're just recreating that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I was talking about with the martial arts stuff. If you're going to go out and, bang gloves all night, or like hit bags all night, and, you're going to build up a brotherhood, mm-hmm. which I think is really, really needed. Where do you see, like, where you're going with it? Like, where is it the next level for you? And what's going to make you happy with the club?
So we're about a week away from our annual muster. We're going to be meeting globally. The guys get together and we changed location, but it's going to be in Utah this year. And so maybe by the time this podcast airs, this is going to be a lot more public to the members. But the club has evolved, and it evolved from really just a group of guys. It was a men's club saying, let's go explore the world. In that sense of exploration, we found that there were needs as we got better and better at exploring further and further into places. And so that became, while we're here, we should also bring aid. And Jordan and myself are both Christians. We have a Christian background. That's not in the club. The club, we bring every guy, every race, every religion. We don't want to be affiliated necessarily with Christianity. But for us, it's important that we're doing everything we can to leave it better. That's the club's motto, is leave it better. And so for us moving forward, the big vision now, it used to be, hey, we're going to have this club. It might be small. We talked about 300 members. Now the next step is looking at how do we leave this better on a much bigger scale beyond us. We see ourselves as stewards of the club. And so we're looking to scale to thousands of guys, tens of thousands of guys, but make the central component, leave it better. And that's going to be missions. But through those missions, we use those missions as a tool to leave our members better, to impact our members in a way. And we're doing it very intentionally, where we're integrating transformational leadership elements into our training that allows them to have the tools to show up as transformational leaders in their homes, their communities. And we're seeing that have already a significant impact, but now we're going all in on that.
Nice. Erik, where can people find you? If somebody wants to go on a trip or join the Brotherhood or just get more information, where can they find you?
So if you're looking for us, best thing to just follow what's going on currently is on Instagram, Freshline Moto Club on Instagram. And you'll see there's links in the app or in the bio. There's links to our YouTube to see more. There's links to apply and learn more. And that's where guys are coming through right now. And then from there, you have to apply, get into an assessment call. And then one of our expedition leaders will talk to you and see if this is for you.
Awesome. Erik, thank you for being on the show and flying out.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.